Welcome to Honest Talk about heartbreak, dating, and relationships. The podcast helping you navigate your path to happy ever after with your host, Rob McPhillips from RelationshipGPSProject.com.
So it sounds, Reggie, like you've had quite an interesting relationship journey. It sounds like you had quite a few struggles in the beginning, and seems to be something that you've been able to find your way to work through quite successfully.
There has been some obstacles and some barriers in our relationship. Yes, absolutely.
So, I mean, let's start from the beginning. Where did you meet? And
we actually, the struggles started from the very beginning. It's funny that we're talking about struggles. We met through our exes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There was a whole lot of interesting occurrences that led up to us meeting, but we met through friends, and we were both with other people at the time, and our exes actually dated each other, which made it even more odd. But we met, and we had an immediate liking to each other. It caused some problems, as you could imagine, being with other people. We did rectify it. We did end our relationships before pursuing anything with each other. I'm happy to say that, because a lot of people don't do that. And we lost a lot of friends in doing it that way, but it was, in the long run, it was worth it. The actual process of meeting was really weird, because she was moving in with roommates that had just moved out of where I was living, so she's helping them move, and it was, I know it's corny and it sounds really weird, and I smile like a goofy kid every time I say it, but I literally, the first time I saw her, I said, I want her, and that was that. And even though I had a girlfriend at the time, you can't really control those feelings. Turns out she felt the same way, so that's positive. But that's really how we met. It led to some turmoil among our friends, but we had to stick it out together.
So, okay, so you had a girlfriend, and your girlfriend had dated her ex, or?
Correct.
Oh, okay. So in the past,
the people we were with at the time when we met had dated each other,
right?
Previously.
Okay, and so you met, and there was an instant attraction, and you felt like she was the one for you, and she felt the same.
Absolutely.
And so you told your partners about this? Was this straight away?
It took a couple of months. It was about 4 or 5 months of little flirtations here and there and little comments. And it actually took about 3 months before we even really realized that the attraction was mutual. A lot of times you're in a relationship with somebody and you may find someone else attractive and you hide it and you keep it to yourself thinking it's nothing. This kind of started to develop through the flirtations, and we were hanging out as friends because we had a group of friends we would all just hang out on Fridays and Saturdays or go to the bar or something like that. And it became more and more difficult to conceal the fact that I was highly attracted to her. And now, through developing a friendship, insanely interested. And as you can imagine, that causes some problems. But it did take a couple of months for it to really come to fruition. I want to say we met in July of 2008, and we didn't actually officially call ourselves together until January 1st, 2009. So just about 6 months total.
And so, I mean, was your girlfriend aware before you told her of like what was developing?
I think she was a little bit, because I know that women just have that intuition, I think. Yeah. But one night we were sitting around with our group, and we were having some shots, and we were smoking cigarettes and everything. We used to smoke cigarettes. And everyone went inside, and we were standing behind to finish our cigarettes. And I just looked at her. I said, "Can I say something that's completely just inappropriate?" And she said, "Yeah, what's that?" I said, "I want you so bad." And she looked at me and she said, "Well, at least the feeling's mutual." And that was the alcohol kind of helped me be a little more forward with it, but the feelings were genuine. And from there, we did conceal it a little bit longer, but eventually we did, about a month after that is when we finally ended it with our other partners.
Okay. And so how'd your relationship been like with your ex, like your ex now, but the current girlfriend then?
Actually, this, when I said that our struggle started in the beginning, the day I broke up with my ex, she swallowed 12 sleeping pills and landed herself in a coma in the hospital for 10 days.
Okay.
And my current Tab, who I'm with now, she drove me to the hospital every single day to see my ex. When I got the news, I was at work. She picked me up, took me to the hospital the first time, took me there every day to see her, and really supported me through that, because it was really rough. You end a relationship with somebody and they immediately, to everyone else's perception, appears to have attempted to kill themselves. And there was a note involved and everything like that. And it was a really difficult time. It took me a long, long time to get past the fact that it was not my fault and I'm not responsible for her choices. But a lot of our friends couldn't separate the fact that act was her decision, and had nothing to do with what I had done, because our relationship was ending far before that. It just hit that breaking point for her, I guess. So that's kind of how she reacted. Then my current girlfriend's her ex reacted quite differently. When I got the first night I went over there, he was there and the chest puffed up. "What are you doing here?" And so I'm just hanging out. And actually the first night that we had spent together, her ex was outside the window. Her ex was outside the window and was knocking and trying to get her attention, and it was really, our exes didn't take it well, and it created some hurdles to cross just immediately.
And you said that it caused a lot of falling out amongst your friends.
Oh yeah.
Lost.
Oh yeah, I had friends that just told me that I was selfish, that they didn't understand how I could leave someone like that. And, truth be told, a lot of people are not going to understand your choices for leaving a relationship. But in that particular relationship, I had to remind my friends, like, you don't see everything that happens. You're not in those intimate moments, and you're not behind closed doors. But it was a lot of, they didn't see what I saw, and they didn't see what I experienced in that relationship that made it to the point that I had to leave. And then to add insult to injury, when she did the act of swallowing all those pills, it really, I didn't understand why people kind of took her side on that. I get it now. It's been 10 years now. I get it. It's more out of sympathy for somebody that you side with them. But a lot of friends just, because they saw it as cheating, even though I didn't cheat on her and I didn't do anything with my current fiance, or at the time when I was still with my ex. A lot of people still saw it as cheating because we had the flirtation and almost the plan, if you will, to be together. And I think that's where a lot of people just didn't quite think what I did was right. And today I can say that I probably agree with him. It was not the best idea to leave one relationship and jump into another. But I guess to quote an old saying, the heart wants what the heart wants.
Yeah, I mean, you can't control when you get to meet someone, and so if you feel that attraction, and you feel like this is the person that's right for you, which your situation seems to have borne out that it was, then I mean, you can't control the timing of that.
Really not.
I mean, I always think if you feel good about what you've done, other people might not understand, but as long as you can look in the mirror and that you feel that you've done the right thing.
Oh no, absolutely. And in that regard, I can tell you, with everything that had come to find out after the fact, 100% made the right decision, because it turns out she was done with me also. It was just I happened to get to it first.
Okay. So what had that relationship been like then?
That relationship was it was March truck day. That relationship was I think the best way to describe it would probably be borderline abusive, not physically. Um, but there were times when things were made to be my fault. I was made to do things that just kind of weren't. It just wasn't something that you make people do. The best example I can think of is when we'd have guests over, and if I didn't clean right away when she cleaned, because in my reason, you cleaned your house after your guests left. But if I didn't clean right away, it was that we would fight in front of people. She would say things that made me sound like an idiot. And it was always on me to do stuff, and on me to make decisions, on me to clean and to cook. And she had some medical issues, and I'm not downplaying her medical issues, but it prevented her from doing a lot. And it did feel, because of her attitude, that, it was kind of taking advantage of it and using it in our relationship to almost make me feel bad and do more things for her. And I'm not saying that that is the case, because I really hate to assume that. It's not a conversation we've ever had. But that is the feeling that I got, and the feeling that our guests got. The Thanksgiving before we broke up, actually, and my current girlfriend was there for this one. The Thanksgiving right before we broke up, I had taken the dogs out instead of cleaning, and what ended up happening is she ended up yelling and screaming at me and demanding that I immediately clean the floor while our guests are all standing there having coffee. So I was down on my hands and knees cleaning the floor with a small scrub brush. And just things like that. Just it stacked up. And then she also had another friend, or she called him her soulmate. He was always around. They never slept together. They supposedly never did anything. But it was a package deal. So it was like being with her and him, which is odd because I'm a straight man. There was nothing sexual between the three of us, but the relationship and the expectations of support and support was there, both financially and emotionally. So I was expected to support him emotionally, support him financially, as well as her. And that gets to be too much when you're trying to be in a relationship, when we were engaged. So at one point in the future, it was supposed to be a marriage. It was rough, and it's one of those relationships where you're in for so long, it just becomes a habit, and it becomes the normal. And you don't think that you can break away, because you don't think that anyone else is going to put up with you or deal with you or love you for who you are. And it's 100% false. If that's the kind of relationship you're in, there's always going to be someone out there that's going to love you. And that's what my current girlfriend did for me. I was feeling down on myself and some self-pity because of the situation I was in with my ex, and always feeling like she was the only one that was going to love me, the only one that was going to put up with my attitude, the only one that was going to put up with my quirks. And I'm unloading this on our friends that we all used to hang out with. And my girlfriend now, Tab, she slams her hands down on the table and she goes, "Well, maybe that's because you never give anyone else a chance." And that comment right there opened my eyes, and everyone's eyes need to be open to that when you're in that type of relationship that you just feel like you can't get out of because no one else is going to be there for you. Sometimes you got to take a look and ask yourself, are you really giving someone else a chance? And that was the case. I wasn't giving anyone else a chance. I had reserved myself to believe that was the only person that was going to ever love me.
Yeah. So often I think we make up the story of we decide for other people without giving them the chance to decide.
Absolutely.
Whether they're going to love us or not. So the question that comes up in my mind is talking about your ex-girlfriend. What was it that made you feel that you couldn't say no, or made you feel that you needed to do what the things that she was telling you?
I'm a very empathetic person, and for her, because of her medical issues, she couldn't find work, and the guy that I had mentioned, her soulmate, her best friend, he was also struggling to find work because he had back issues, so there's only a certain type of work that he could do. And I felt bad. Part of it was that I felt like no one else would love me, but the other part was I felt like who would support them, and where would they live, where would they go, how would they support themselves? And it's another one of those things that you kind of have to, and it's going to sound insanely cruel, but quite frankly, when the relationship's done and there's no more, the love's not there anymore, it's not really your responsibility to figure out how they're going to support themselves. And that's something that, as hard as it is to come to terms with for someone who, I have that feeling of responsibility to the people that I love and the people that I care for, because I still care for them. I still care for both of those individuals. Because I have that feeling of responsibility. It was really hard to say, this is over, get out. Because they were both living in my house with me and with my mother as well. And even after we broke up, I told him, listen, stay as long as you need. I didn't stay there, but I let them stay there. And that's really, it was that financial and emotional responsibility. And then combined with the feeling that no one else is going to love me for me, and no one else is going to support me emotionally the way I need to be supported. You put those two things together, it's a dangerous mixture to trap yourself in a relationship.
Yeah. So I'm curious if were you able to, like, are you still friends with your ex-girlfriend, or is that all completely finished? Yeah.
It's not, there was never really a discussion or a choice made. After we ended it, there was a lot of comments and a lot of things that had come out that were just cruel, and combined with, I mentioned that there was a letter involved that appeared to blame me when she attempted to hurt herself.
Yeah.
She had woken me up in the middle of the night one night when I did stay there after we broke up, just screaming at me that she absolutely hated me and wanted me out of her life. And she had said some cruel things in the hospital when I went to see her, like, "Oh, I can't believe you're here. Why would you even show up?" You're like, things like that. She told me that if my current girlfriend was not a mother, she would have killed her. So saying hurtful things like that and making threats like that, it makes it really easy. It makes it a lot easier to just continue walking away. We attempted to stay friends for probably about a year, but I just stopped putting in the work. It no longer became important, and I saw that it was hurting my current girlfriend that I kept trying to retain that friendship. I'm the type of person, I try to remain friends with all my exes, because there's a reason that they're in your life in the first place, because there is that care for them. And I've succeeded with most of them, but this is one that I can't kindle that friendship, because I don't actually know if there was a friendship there, or if it went straight from strangers to relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, then I'm curious to hear what happened next.
Yeah. Cause I know this is actually not even close to the reason that we were talking. It just kind of got into it. But no, so I had been with Tab for, we got together in January 2009. Everything was great. She had a daughter, 4 years old, about to turn 4 years old. Our daughter immediately took to me. As a matter of fact, she started asking questions about if I was her dad and things like that. And eventually we let her make the choice to allow me to be her dad. And to choose me as her dad. And we stayed together really strong for the first year. We had our ups and downs. Like I mentioned, there was a lot of drama with leaving the ex and trying to keep that friendship with her made our relationship a little rocky the first 6 months to a year. But we were able to make it through. We had moved a couple of times, and what had happened, her and her daughter were living with me and my mother, and I had lost my job, and my mother was, she had a credit card settlement that was garnishing her wages. So we had a serious decrease in the amount of money that we could put into the house. And it had got to the point where the finances were so tight that, it caused fights. And I was having some emotional issues, and I was in therapy and getting that straightened out. And with the loss of income comes, you can't pay your rent, you can't pay some of your other bills. Our cable had got shut off. Our electric would go off for a day or two, and then we'd have to turn it back on. And our rent ended up being about 3 months behind, and we got to the point where we were being evicted. And this was them. I'm fast forwarding about 2 years. This is the summer of 2011 that I'm talking about here.
Okay.
The first 2.5 years were pretty solid. You know, you have your ups and your downs, but when we hit this financial crisis, it put us in a place that it scared us, because we didn't know where we were going to live, and we got a kid to think about, you know. By this time she was, 6 years old, I believe. I think she was 6. Oh God. I hope she was 6, because otherwise I feel bad. So 6 years old, and the only thought in our head is, because we've seen friends go through this where they can't pay their rent, so they end up couch surfing, bouncing from couch to couch, from friend's house to friend's house, and the only thing playing in our head is, I can't do this with a 6-year-old. We can't do this with a 6-year-old. You can't do that to a kid. Like, you can't have that lifestyle of not really knowing where you're going to sleep with a kid in the picture. So, my girlfriend's from Massachusetts, and her parents are still up there. They still own the house up there, and it got to the point where we weren't able to get assistance for rent. We weren't able to get assistance to find a place to live. We got caught in a couple of loopholes. We either made too much money for one assistance program, not enough money for another assistance program. It got a little tight, and it got down to the wire where our eviction was about a month away, or less than a month away. And I told her, I said, you know, I think it's time you call your mom. And so we ended up deciding that she was going to go to Massachusetts for a couple of months until we could get the financial situation ironed out. And so in July of 2011, she packed up her 1995 Camaro with everything that she could, and her and her daughter drove to Massachusetts. Took them about 4 days to get there. It was a horrible storm as they drove up there. Neither me or her mother slept a lick the entire time, but I remember it like it was yesterday. And when she got there, you know, she was able to find a job relatively quickly. She quit smoking. She lost some weight. You know, our daughter got into a really good school, actually the school my wife went to when she was a kid, the elementary school. So, you know, life turned out to be, it actually came surprisingly easy and came surprisingly simple for them. And I ended up not being able to straighten out my financial situation in the 6 months that we had agreed on. So 6 months became a year, and the year became 2, and 2 became 3, and eventually became 5 years that she spent in Massachusetts.
And you were, sorry, I didn't catch where you were.
I was in Florida.
Okay, so that's quite a distance. I'm in the UK, so.
Front door to front door is 1,363 miles.
Wow, so that's quite a drive then.
Yes.
So now I'm guessing that the first couple of years, for her to move in with you and your mum is probably, in a lot of cases, that would be quite a lot of strain, and then obviously the financial things is going to be a lot of stress for you at that time.
It is, especially in a new relationship. It was, yeah. Yeah.
And so now I'm imagining there was times there was a lot of stress, and that generally causes arguments. So I'm wondering, what did you learn from that, and how did it affect the relationship?
I would say that the one thing I did learn from the 2.5 years we were together is that cleaning the house is a mutual responsibility. That was one thing that I really struggled with, was keeping the house clean. It's not something that I was an only child. I was very spoiled. So if I decided not to clean, eventually my mother would just do it. And I don't blame her for that. She, you know, I love her to death. And, but that's how it was, is if I just didn't do it, my mom would eventually just do it, because she didn't want to, you know, she was a single parent. I'm only a child. So we had a very special relationship. So she would naturally just do things for me and to keep my life, easy and happy. And that prevented me from being able to keep the house clean. So we struggled a lot with our cleaning issues. And that put a lot of stress on my girlfriend, because she likes a clean house and was raised with a clean house. And I was not. I was raised that someone else is going to clean it if you just leave it there long enough. So I learned that if you leave it there long enough, it gets thrown at your head. No, she never threw anything at me. But I did learn that it is a mutual responsibility to clean a house. I did also learn that if you feel a fight coming, sometimes it is better to walk away and, breathe and think about if it's really worth the fight, because most of the time it's not worth the fight. It's something that you can talk out 10 minutes later if you just drop the attitude. And I also learned that she put up with a lot of crap. I think what I learned the most in the 2.5 years, and unfortunately it took me the 5 years being apart to realize what I learned, was she put up with a lot of crap from me, because I used to have an anger streak, not to the point of becoming physical with people, but especially if I was looking for something that I couldn't find. Things would get thrown, words would be said, about myself or about the situation. If someone tried to help me, I would get a real attitude with them, like, oh, of course I looked there. And, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about her, and the fact that I was not the person and the calm, cool person that I thought I was. And she put up with a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of times where she probably should have walked out. And I learned how strong she was, to the fact that she dealt with the first 2.5 years of what we went through.
And were you recognizing that as you went through, or was that something that you found later, like when you reflected on?
I did not learn all of this until she was gone. And and I don't mean gone out of my life, because we did maintain a relationship in those 5 years. But if we've talked about this numerous times. She's sitting next to me now. She's nodding her head. We've talked about this numerous times, that if we would not have separated, that our relationship probably would have ended. If she hadn't moved to Massachusetts for that time, and the situation that we were in with the fighting and the cleaning and me just not, like, when I was in one of my moods, I guess we'll call it, you couldn't talk to me. You couldn't have a conversation with me. And I didn't realize this until she was in Massachusetts, and I'm sitting alone in a 10 by 10 room that I'm renting from some guy off of Craigslist, reflecting on our life together. And it's, a lot of people realize these things after their relationship's over. And I was very, very lucky in the fact that we didn't have to end the relationship for me to have these realizations and to be able to start fixing myself and fixing the things that needed to be fixed.
Yeah, that typically is the kind of thing that people find out later, like you say, when it's too late.
Yeah, it is.
So there's one thing you skimmed over quite quickly, but I think it's really a really significant learning, that you learn to wait 10 minutes to fight, you said.
Yes. Yeah, so, a lot of times when something just strikes a nerve, it could be something someone says, a situation that happened. It's easy to just jump into that fight and start screaming and yelling at somebody, especially if they did something that you didn't like. I don't even remember some of the stuff we fought about. That's how trivial it was. But that goes to show, if you immediately jump into a fight, it's gonna end up at a point that you have no idea why you're even fighting anyways, and you're probably not even going to remember the reason you fought in a week. Yeah. So the one thing we try to do now, and it doesn't happen all the time, but the one thing that I've tried to do is, when I feel that coming and I feel that irritation, I just say, all right, we'll just talk about it later. Or I don't even bring it up when I'm mad. I'll wait until I have time to think about it. It's hard. It's really hard to do.
Okay, so that's really interesting, because I think that is one of the biggest thing that people need to learn to do in a relationship is
it's
they
hard.
react emotionally.
They do. We all do. It's human nature. We're emotional beings.
So what? I'm just really trying to pick apart the exact process. So you feel the emotion, and that's the time when you normally would sulk, or you'd say something or whatever. But what you're doing is you're saying to yourself, okay, it doesn't matter. I can deal with it in 10 minutes. We can talk about it later.
normally something usually does get said, and then it's that realization of nope, we need to wait on this. The knee-jerk reaction is always going to be to say something, and most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, I can't stop myself from saying something. But I try to keep it's taken a lot of practice, and I have to actually thank my job for part of the reason that I've learned to do this is that when you're faced with an emotional situation that you have that knee-jerk reaction to react emotionally back is to do something to remind yourself of that commitment to not react. And one of the things that I do is I will hold my own hands, or now I'll play with my beard. And it's kind of like a subtle reminder that I've given myself to hold back the things that I want to say, and to wait until the situation's fully out there in front of you, and you know what you're dealing with, no matter what it is. So that's one of the things that I learned through my job. I work in a call center, and as you can imagine, I'm faced with a lot of dramatic and interesting situations. But through doing that, and through working with having 20 people have terrible days every day, and having to not react to them and stay positive for them, it's helped me to kind of do that in my personal relationship as well, as to kind of have that reminder to not react right now, but to wait. And so if there's a reminder that you can give yourself, I know some people twiddle their thumbs. They clasp their hands together. Some people clasp their hands together very, very tightly. I know somebody that they play with it, they rub their fingers along their mouth, not in it sounds really weird to say, but it's almost like in a thoughtful way. I play with my beard a little bit in a thoughtful way, and it's that reminder to step back. So you have to give yourself a reminder. I don't think it's something that's going to happen naturally, at least not right away. Okay.
So I'm really interested. You said that your girlfriend is Tammy, is it?
Tabby. And
you said she's sitting next to you?
About 3 feet away from me, yeah.
Okay. And would she, I'm curious if it's okay to ask her, would she say the same things, or would she have something different to say?
She says she doesn't want to talk, but do you agree? You've heard me, or you've not been listening? Do you agree with the things that I'm saying, or do you think differently? She said, no, it's about right.
Okay. So yeah, it sounds like you had 5 years to kind of miss each other, to reflect on the early days.
And the 5 years were rough in themselves, because in the beginning it was really hard, because I was coming to terms with the fact that she wasn't coming back immediately, as we had discussed. As we had discussed, she wasn't coming back immediately. I began to sulk. I tried to seek emotional comfort elsewhere. And we came very close to ending it when I came very close, actually. I got to own that fact. She's probably staring in the back of my head right now. I came very close to ending it with her because she wasn't coming back. But immediately after having that conversation with her, I realized that that's not what I wanted, and that's not where my life needed to head. And I dropped into tears, called my mother. I was able to rectify it. I ended up surprising her on Thanksgiving of 2011, just a few months that she'd been gone. I had already almost pursued a relationship with someone else, and it was almost in a way of being manipulated, kind of like I was with my ex and everything. And I had to pull myself immediately out of that situation, and remember that the reason that we agreed to stay together when she left was because we knew that we wanted to be together. We just couldn't right then and there. But I surprised her on Thanksgiving. She had no idea it was coming up. Her best friend got me from the airport. I arranged it with her mother after apologizing profusely for being a jerk for about a month. And after I surprised her, to her, and I'm kind of remembering what she's told me after the fact, and she's gonna either nod or smack me. not really. But to her, she said it was almost like that solidification that I was willing to put in the work, and that I was willing to wait the time that I needed to wait, and to deal with the situation that we were dealing with rather than run away from it. And that a lot of people I know, when they have that physical separation, it's easier to just run away from it. But if it's something that you want, and that emotion and that passion and that love is there, it's not something that you have to run away from. It's just something that you have to work through.
Yeah.
And she just told me, she said that me coming up there for that Thanksgiving was that big initiative, and taking that initiative to say that this is what I want, and this is, you're the person that I want, and I'm going to go through hell and high water to get to you. And I mean, I didn't go through hell or high water, but I did go through Georgia and the Carolinas, which is like the same thing.
So then you had 5 years, which must have been difficult. How did you keep, aside from that, like the rest? So that was within the first year, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was within the first 6 months. Yeah.
And then how did you keep the next 4.5 years going?
Oh, at the time we had no idea that we had such a long way to go. Truthfully, no idea. We didn't think it was going to last. We thought we were just doing it until something came along, or until we just lost touch, as most people just lose touch. And even after going up there for Thanksgiving, it's still one of those things, like, you're living 1,300 miles away. There is no way this is going to work without a plan to be back together physically somehow. And we had to somehow make a plan, but we couldn't, because she genuinely wanted to stay in Massachusetts. Our daughter was getting better education. She was working. She was working in photography, which is her chosen field. I was making really good money where I was. I had ended up getting promoted to a supervisor where I was working, which even made it even harder. We had plans where I was supposed to move up there. That didn't work out. What we really did, and what really helped, though, is we talked just about every day. And on the days that we didn't talk, there was usually a really good reason, like, we were out doing something, or we were just busy working all day. We talked every day. We made it a point to see each other. Every time I could save up the money, I would fly up to Massachusetts. I would fly them down here. I will say the one positive side of this, and I can't go without saying this, because I know she agrees with me. The one positive side of having the separation is that the time that we did spend together, we got to make some incredible memories, because I mentioned that I had gotten promoted, and so I was making decent money being a single individual with roommates. I ended up having a good amount of extra money that I was able to save. And so on vacations, we would do things like theme parks and cruises and zip lining and going into caverns in New York City and Niagara Falls. And so we were able to do these incredible vacations and make really good memories for our daughter to remember. The time with me being there is always, we were always doing something. And the memories that stick with her are the bigger ones when we were together, because that's when we made our big memories. When you grow up and you think back as a kid, you only remember the big things that happened. Like, you remember the first time you went to Disney World, or you remember when you went to Six Flags for the first time, or you remember when you went on a cruise. Those are the things that she remembers, and I'm there in all of them. And that's something that came out really positive of the 5 years. But we made it work just through communication and visiting. You have to make a point to see each other. There is a physical need of a relationship, that goes without saying, especially for men. And so in order to keep yourself sane, and in order to keep yourself in that relationship, you do have to see each other physically, if at all possible. And so we made that point to see each other. We talked all the time. We still had our fights. We still had our disagreements. We still had our days where she felt like I didn't talk to her enough. And I felt the same way. She went through a period of time of almost a year, in which she had gotten a really bad infection in her eye and had to have a whole bunch of surgeries. And for me not being there, that was really hard. And that made it really hard for us to not talk sometimes, because she was going through a lot, and sometimes I wasn't always available for her. So when things like that happen, when we would go through those really emotionally trying times, or for her, that was, that was a really long time to be without that support of the person you love. It makes it really hard, but still making that time to talk and making that time the time that you would spend together each day, you still have to spend together.
Yeah, I can see that. And I suppose it's the thing of like the hope of looking forward and the feeling that one day you will be together, that it makes it easier to get through. Well, not easier, but yeah.
It makes it easier, but it still seems like a dream. Like, it still seems like, when you're a kid and you want to be a major league baseball player, and you play baseball in high school, and even though you get really good, and even when you're playing sports in college, it still doesn't feel like you're going to become a professional. So even though we were putting in the work and we were putting in the time, it still didn't feel like we were going to get back together for a while. So it still felt like a dream. It still felt like it wasn't going to happen. Yeah.
Okay. So, and then the dates came when you were able to be together.
So, and yeah, that happened. We planned it for about a year. So after the 4 years were up, they had, her and her daughter came down here, and we had gone on a cruise, and we had went to SeaWorld with my mother. And, I think in that vacation, she had the realization that I was not ready to just up and leave. My mother's older, and I mentioned I'm an only child, single mother. So my mother is still single, and I'm still an only child. But she's older, she's handicapped, she's in an electric wheelchair, she has some mobility issues, and she has some heart issues now as well. So I think that my girlfriend realized that I wasn't ready to just up and leave my mom, especially. And in that vacation is when she kind of started to come around to the fact of coming back to Florida instead of moving me to Massachusetts. And that summer of 2015 is when she told her parents and she told her friends that in a year, I'm going to move back to Florida. And we wanted to wait until our daughter was at an elementary school. So that's why we waited the extra years to allow our daughter to go through 5th grade and finish out elementary school at the same school. And we made that choice. And so that for that entire last year of us being apart, we had a plan, we had a date. It still seemed like it wasn't going to happen, but we had a plan and a date, and it became really real 6 months out. I started looking for a place for us because I was still living with my mother. I figured, why not have me and my mother support each other while I can? It's not like I'm living with anybody else. And I had to find a place for us. I had to, the place that I found had to be cleaned up a little bit and some work done to it. And the day finally came, and I drove up to Massachusetts. I drove, it took me 2 days, me and my dog. I stopped in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and then the next day I stopped in New Jersey because I had an uncle that lives in New Jersey. And the day after that, they took a bus down from Massachusetts to New Jersey, and I picked them up in Newark, New Jersey at the bus station, and we went to the Statue of Liberty. And a week later, we drove back down to Florida and moved them in. We did go up to Massachusetts in between that time frame. So, yes, sorry. After the statue, we went to Massachusetts, spent a week there, and then drove down to Florida. She's correcting me in the background. She's screaming at me.
Okay.
So, but, yep.
Okay, so I'm imagining that must be a challenge because your daughter's got older, and although she's had her biggest experiences with you, you haven't been there kind of day to day,
right?
And I imagine her and your partner had got into their own kind of rhythm and routine. So what was it like when you all got back together?
Well, we had done our best to prepare our daughter. I had told her that, some of the things that you've gotten away with, you're not going to get away with. I have rules in my house that you're going to be living, we're all going to be living together. So, and it's going to be a little bit of a smaller place. So we're going to have certain rules. we talked a lot about schoolwork that had to be done. When it finally happened and we were finally down here, I think the biggest adjustment was the loss of alone time, which is really weird to say because, when you spend 5 years apart from somebody, you would think that alone time would no longer matter. But it's quite the opposite, because you grow to be used to and accustomed to having that solitary time to yourself often, and losing, and all three of us really losing that, because it is a smaller apartment, and it is only 2 bedrooms, and it's basically 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen, and so we were in a very, very much of a smaller place. And then having 3 of us all in it together, it did create some fight and some tensions, especially organizing the house and decorating the house. And luckily we had done a lot of talking leading up to it, so we didn't fight a lot about what the house was going to look like or anything like that. What we would end up fighting about is the little tiny details of how we're spending our time, and that's where that appreciation of having the alone time. My wife spent a lot of alone time in Massachusetts. I spent every night by myself pretty much watching Netflix. So that was the biggest adjustment, was getting used to having people there again, even though I wanted them there. And even though, we had planned for it and hoped for it and wished for it for so long, when it finally happened, one, the first 2 months felt like a vacation because that's the only time we saw each other for 5 years. And 2, it was difficult to have someone always there all of a sudden. And then to not have as many wonderful things that you can do, because now, I'm supporting her and I'm supporting our daughter. I'm paying more for rent. I'm paying more bills because I'm no longer splitting it with somebody. We couldn't do all the wonderful things that we used to do together, the zip lining and the things like that. So it became it was an adjustment. I'm thinking back to it now. It was quite an adjustment to not be able to do all those things. Luckily, I live in an area where they have a lot of free festivals and free events that happen, so we're still able to get out and do stuff together. But it's not the same. It's not a cruise. It's not SeaWorld. It's not Six Flags.
Yeah.
So, but the loss of alone time, that's probably the biggest one. Biggest adjustment.
Okay, and so it's now been 5 years on, isn't it? 5 years. She moved back the summer of 2016. So we've actually we have been together physically 5 years and apart 5 years, if you put all the time together. And so 2.5, and then 5 years apart, and then 2.5 since she came back. So we have kind of a sandwich right now. Okay, and so it's a much smoother 2 years or 3 years since the first couple of years.
Yeah, it's been almost 3 years since they moved back to Florida.
Okay, so if you were to, I'm thinking of people who might listen who may be in a long distance relationship. What would be your top 3 to 5 tips for handling
actually,
the visit is a priority?
I actually made this post on Facebook about 3 years into our relationship, the top 5 ways to manage a long distance relationship. Number 1 is communicate daily. Number 2 is make time to see each other, whether through Skype or in person. And 3, 4, and 5 are keep it in your pants, keep it in your pants, keep it in your pants.
Okay, so
that's I hate to say it that way, but that's, if you can communicate and you can find a way to see each other, as long as you're even if you're not talking, just being on the phone together. Like, even still to this day, I can sit on the phone with my wife for 10 minutes and not say a word.
Yeah.
Like, even if you're just there, even if you're just staring at each other through Skype. We used to Skype and we would just lay in bed and just make faces at each other, like stupid little faces. find a way to see each other, find a way to still have those intimate moments, those stupid little things that you would do when you're together. You know, when you're together, you'll sit there and you'll make faces at each other. When you're together, you'll sit there and just be like, I love you. No, I love you. Like, you do that. People don't admit it, but you do that in a relation. We do it now. We still do it. You got to make time for those silly moments, and you have to allow them to happen. Don't just end the phone call because you're done talking. Don't just end the Skype conversation because there's nothing to say. You know, continue it. And then the last thing you do is just really, really and truly don't sleep with anybody else. And I think that's probably a lot harder for men than women, but that's one of the biggest things I think in relationships with long distance, is that fear that you're going to be intimate with another individual and then it's never going to be the same. Because regardless whether you have permission or not, and I'll be honest, I had permission in the first year, and I did it. I did have an intimate relationship with 2 other people. I told her about both of them, and I did not do anything past the first year. I did have permission. I realized that I didn't want permission, and I didn't want that life, and I didn't want to be that person because I still felt like it was cheating. But even if you do, really try not to have a physical relationship with anyone else, because for a woman especially, that I've noticed that is probably one of the biggest reasons that a relationship ends, is because after that happens, the physical relationship to a woman is much more valuable than it is to a man. And when that physical relationship is no longer personal between just 2 individuals, and someone has gone off, and it could be a woman or a man. This is just what I've known in my relationship. But one of the things with that physical relationship is, once it's happened, even if you have permission and even if the forgiveness is there, it's still not quite the same. And that's the biggest piece, I think, for a woman, is to have that physical intimacy still be very personal and still only be like, we're the only 2 people that are physically intimate. For her, for example, for me, it's that worry of, you know, has she been with other people, or, you know, if she had been, and she had not been, but if she had been, for me, it would be, you know, I'll be honest. I think as a man, my first thought, and I'm sorry for the humor, is, you know, was he better than me? And you know, that kind of thing, I think, gets to us. And I think that those questions, if you do make that mistake and you do have an intimate relationship with another person who you're not with because they're further away, you have to tell them. You have to really work to get past it, because once that's broken, it's not going to be the same. There's not going to be 100% trust there. I don't have 100% trust from her. She says I do. I know I don't, because I did break that. And that to me is one of the crucial pieces, is if you can manage to not be intimate with someone else, then I think that's going to save your relationship more than anything else, is that keeping the intimacy personal between you and the person you love.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's been interesting. You've had an eventful and and you've brought a lot of awareness and consciousness to your processes and to like the way that you've developed and ways that you've been able to manage the relationship, and that's a relationship that's gone through a lot of challenge and stress.
It has.
Okay.
It definitely has. It's been a ride, but you know what? It's worth it in the long run. When it's the person that you're meant to be with, you find a way to make it work. You find a way to get through all the stuff. And when everyone else is looking at you and saying, "Why do you keep doing it?" you know in your heart that you're doing it because it's the right thing and it's the best thing for you.
Okay. Well, it's nice to hear. I mean, I spend most of my time talking to people who are after a breakup, or people who, you know, the relationship isn't going so well. But it's nice to hear from someone who, you know, that their relationship is working out and they found ways to make that fulfilling and to get that kind of relationship that everyone wants.
Yeah. I mean, it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. And this is probably something I'd say to anyone doing a long distance relationship, or even if you're going through a breakup, like, it's not going to be perfect. If you're looking for the perfect relationship, you're going to have to date a rock, because it's not going to be perfect. There's nothing about a relationship that's going to be perfect or easy or simple or happy all the time. And that's something that I think that the 5 years apart and then even coming back together, because we still fight, we still have disagreements, we still scream and yell at each other. I still get pissed off when I'm looking for stuff. But we've learned ways to manage it. And through having the 5 years and talking daily, this is why communication is the most important piece of a relationship. Through talking daily and communicating, I know how to talk to her, and I know how not to talk to her. And you learn to communicate. When the only thing you can do is talk, you learn to communicate so much better. We always joke around, and I tell her, I said, you know what? It should be a condition of getting married that you have to spend a year apart, because the time that we spend apart of only talk, that our communication is incredible. And I think that's something that I think everyone could learn, is spend some time genuinely just talking to your partner, and then without talking about the finances, the bills, or the job, or the friends, or the drama. Literally just talk about stupid stuff and your past, and just communicate. And that's one thing that has really helped us. And I think for people going through a breakup too, or even considering a breakup, that communication piece is huge. If you spend some time just talking, it makes all the difference in the world.
And so, I mean, communication is so important for so many reasons. Number one, to understand how the other person is going, so that you're not making up stories in your own head of what the reality is. Number two, expressing what you're doing. And then it's also keeping the bond, and it's dealing with challenges and things together. So are there particular ways that you've learned about talking together from that time? You said you learned how to talk so much better.
So one of the things that we've learned a lot about each other is how we as an individual communicate, and how we as individuals take in information and put out information. And what I've learned about her is, I can't just come to her with something important. I have to kind of work up to it. And one thing that she learned with me is she can't spring something on me that she wants to do. It's got to be brought up in advance. I'm more of a, let's plan the weekend, rather than, hey, it's Saturday, what are you going to do? We've learned that, I've learned that there's certain ways that I can talk that are going to upset her. And then I can say the same thing in a different way that doesn't upset her. And it's not really learning. It's not really something that is going to fit every relationship, because you truly have to learn how to communicate with that individual. Because I can communicate to anybody, but it doesn't mean it's going to be effective, and it doesn't mean it's going to be personal. It doesn't mean it's going to mean anything. But learning how not to push her buttons, learning how to bring things up in a way that she understands them, learning how to say things that frustrate me in a way that's not going to frustrate her. Because in a relationship, you have to be able to bring up your concerns. So an example I give sometimes, I tell her, I said, sometimes when, and I can't think of the exact example, so I'm just going to make one up. So I would tell her, sometimes when we talk, I feel like you're not paying attention to me because you're scrolling on your iPad. And she tells me, well, I can listen to you and hold a conversation and be on my iPad. No, me, I cannot. Reggie, I'm talking about myself now. I can't hold my phone and scroll Facebook and have a conversation.
Yeah.
So being able to have that communication and see that, she can communicate differently than I can. And she's also learned that if I have my phone in my hand, to ask me to put it down before talking to me. So things like that, you just learn how to better talk to that person. Maybe not everybody, because I still struggle to communicate with other people. I still get frustrated when other people don't get what I'm trying to say. but it's easier to help her to understand what I'm trying to say because we've had that time to learn how we process things, how long it takes to process things. And that was something we struggled with was the processing of things we would say. Because you can't see faces, so you don't know if someone's thinking, you don't know if they're rolling their eyes. And she takes a while to process things, not in a bad way, but like if I say something or if I ask a question out of the blue, it'll take her a few seconds to process the question, formulate an answer. And she's not the person to say, let me think about that. She's going to sit there and think about it. And so on the phone, that's very difficult, but face to face, you learn, I've learned to be patient with her because on the phone I had to wait in silence with no indication that she was thinking. It sounded like she hung up on me. And, so in person, it makes it a little easier to wait for her to process my questions because I already know that's there. So that's probably an example I can give. You just learn better as individual. Like it's a per couple thing, I guess, is like the way me and my wife communicate is going to be different than the way you and your wife communicate,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I'll let you go because I know it's your Saturday, but it's been really interesting to talk to you, and I think you've given some good tips and good insights.
Thanks for having me. I can say I don't think I've actually ever shared this publicly before with anybody, so I'm actually thank you for having me because being able to talk through this and having her next to me. She's got a smile on her face too. So just kind of remembering all this is actually, it's done something for me too. So I want to thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to have heard your story. Just before we go, if people wanted to catch up with you or talk to you or ask you any questions or know what you're up to, where could people find you?
There's a couple of places. One, I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook, Reggie Daughson, Daughson. You can also find me on my own website, beingonstage.com. Has nothing to do with being in a relationship, but I figured if I have the opportunity to plug myself, I'm going to plug myself. But you can also email Reggie at beingonstage.com. I'm happy to I reply to everything personally. I'm happy. Yeah, that's the best way to connect. I don't have any. I don't actually do this for a living. Talk about relationships or anything. I know. I saw your call out to for anyone that was interested, and I figured why not? I have something to share that I've never shared before. And I think it's unique for people. So this isn't something that I do, but I'm absolutely willing to help anyone that I can and connect with anyone that needs to be, that feels like they need to connect or anything like that. So it's not, I'm not a relationship therapist. I'm not a professional, anything. I just, I have a passion for my wife, and we just happen to gone through a couple of rough times.
Okay. Well, thank you, Reggie. And thank you to your wife for being there and to back up what you were saying.
Yep.
I'll post your contact details if anyone's interested in following up.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for that, and have a great Saturday.
All right. You too. Thanks, man. Have a good one.
Okay. Cheers. Bye.